Well, Deven Choksey of KRChoksey joins in. Hi, Deven. Good morning. It's a Friday morning. Well, let's talk about a couple of numbers there. HDFC, we just heard out the management. What's your view on the stock?
Hi, Nigel. Good morning. Well, I think the fundamentals of housing finance business remain absolutely convincing and very, very strong. So there is no second thought on this particular subject. If you probably look at, I think, the numbers which came up from even smaller companies compared to HDFC like Finance, Bajaj Housing Finance. I think there also, I think one has seen a very sharp growth in the disbursement as well as I think the new loan book that they have created. Similarly, the situation for a larger company like HDFC, I think where you are seeing on a consistent basis higher amount of I think the loan growth as far as I think the retail loan particularly is concerned. I think which is remaining about 20%. So in my viewpoint, I think as long as we see the compounding story continuing for 20% rate of growth and above that, as far as I think housing loan demand is concerned and the disbursement is concerned, I would think that I think this particular segment would probably reward investors in a systematically steady manner over next 3 to 5 years. So from that perspective, I think the looking at company like HDFC, which is eventually becoming even more stronger once it merges with HDFC Bank, I would think that I think the size of the balance sheet would probably expand and expand much systematically and faster going forward.
Okay. Deven, hi, good morning. The other stock I wanted to check with you was Amara Raja Batteries. It had actually fallen off the investors' radar for a bit, but now it's coming back. Very good number, strong margins. The company is, putting up a lithium-ion manufacturing subsidiary as well. Is this a stock to buy now?
Yes, Sonia, good morning. You are right. I think in line with I think most of the other ancillary companies in auto sector, I think this company too has had a sharp fall in past. But I would think that given the kind of program that they implemented, including for the lithium ion, which you just mentioned, I would think that the company probably deserves to be once again back into the books and as far as the portfolios are concerned. So from that particular aspect, I think the stock can be relooked at it. I have not completely studied the entire result part at this point of time, but I believe that I think from whatever numbers that I have seen, I believe that the business of the company is bouncing back and bouncing back very strong. Not too surprisingly though, because both I think industrial sector as well as from the automobile sector, I think that the demand for batteries are also I think rising and rising sharply. So from that point of view, I would think that this particular company would be back into the books of some of the portfolios here.
Deven, hi, good morning. Yesterday in the broader markets, it was all about earnings, right? I mean, so many earnings reactions. Even the disappointments were earnings-led. I mean, there was Voltas, there was Relaxo, and of course on the upside, all kinds of names, M&M Finance, PSU Banks. PSU Banks in particular, Deven, is there more to go here? We are speaking with the management of UCO Bank a little later. Bank of India reported earlier, good set of numbers. What's your sense?
Yeah, Prashant, good morning. Well, I guess I think the PSU banks particularly, because they are available at a valuation at comparatively lower, there is a need to look at this particular segment once again afresh, particularly because of few reasons. On one side, whatever the first part of the provisioning was to happen has already happened, and I think most of the PSBs have already provided for those assets. On the contrary, with the improvement in the economic situation and the conditions, I believe that I think most of these banks are going to be recovering very, very systematically the amount that they have earlier provided in the previous years. Having seen recapitalization in some of the cases, I think the capital adequacy portion also is remaining, I think, equally strong for them to expand the loan book side. What one has seen is the corporate loan book which has started expanding, and I think that is what one has seen in most of the private sector banks, including in case of SBI within the public sector or even Bank of Baroda. So from that perspective too, I believe that I think the loan book expansion would possibly result into better amount of business for most of the PSBs which up till now have been struggling, and particularly from the corporate side, both working capital as well as from term loan side. Seeing the liability side also, I think pretty systematically managed. I would think that the re-rating on most of the PSBs should be seen going forward in coming future.
All right. Deven, this quarter, that's the one that just went by, quarter two, it's normally weak for cement, and this time it was weaker because input costs were higher, prices didn't go up as much. But some of those companies, they miss estimates big time, namely ACC and Ambuja Cements. But a couple of these last companies that came out, Dalmia Bharat, the numbers were in line. JK Lakshmi Cement, actually those numbers are quite good. What would you like from the cement space, given that the second half of the year could be much better?
So you are right. I think second half of the financial year, I think definitely remains better year for cement offtake demand, including for I think constructions, infrastructure projects. So all in all, I think the demand scenario remains quite convincing, quite upbeat. At the same time, I think whatever the worst that one had to factor in as far as the cost hike is concerned, I think has been factored in already. I would believe that the coming period, this month and the quarter, we will be seeing improvement into the cement prices as well, along with I think the offtake. So on one side, the scale would help these companies to result into better amount of profitability. On the other side, some of the price improvement should result into improvement in better amount of profitability. And all in all put together, given the kind of fact that the cost is remaining under control now, possibility of, I think we see the margin pressure up till now, which affected the margins of the companies in cement sector. Probably, I think that would not be the case year after in subsequent quarters. So, yes, I think the strong demand scenario and comparatively better management of cost hereafter would result into better profits for cement companies. So, second half definitely remains, I think, better prospect and would consider the larger players like Ultratech, would consider larger players like Shree Cement, even for that matter in Southern Pocket, Ramco, or for that matter ACC Ambuja combined. I think they are probably deserving to be looked at again, given the size of the volume that they can produce and sell with the profits that would follow thereafter.
Deven, I wanted your thoughts on SBI because the numbers are coming out tomorrow. And this is not going to be such a great quarter. At least the street is anticipating a slow NII growth, although the margins can improve. But overall for the industry, right? I mean, PSU banks have come back in a big way. The stock is at a 52-week high going into the results. Even if there is a slight disappointment, would you use it as an opportunity to buy into SBI?
In fact, Sonia, I would think that the numbers could possibly be, I think, much on the stronger side for SBI, largely because of few reasons. One, on one side, I think the corporate loan book has been expanding. And this is true for most of the larger banks, and SBI is not, I think, exceptional out of it. I think they are equally, I think, covered in that part. The working capital as well as term loan side of the business, I think, has been expanding at the rate of around 15-16% in many of the cases. So from that point of view, I think the size of SBI could possibly, I think, surprise us on the better side of the business. The other part of the activity, the retail credit growth has remained systematically on a stronger wicket, I think, as far as I think the business of the most of the lenders are concerned. And I think, again, SBI would probably have relatively better times. Given the fact that the liability side is well managed by most of these banks, and given the fact that I think in the rising interest rate scenario, they have relatively better opportunity to make margins, I would think that I think the profitability also would remain relatively on a stronger side. So overall, I think I don't know completely whether I think we are fully justified to look at the businesses on a quarter-to-quarter basis. But overall, I think in this second half of the financial year, we are likely to see much sharper growth in the lending businesses, and particularly the larger banks would be benefited out of it.
All right, Deven, I wanted to ask you about some of these electrical consumer durables companies. Voltas was a disappointment; they lost some market share out there. Orient Electric, far smaller out there, but the numbers look very, very disappointing. I'm looking at a sharp margin compression as well out there. Any view on this space, the electric consumer durables companies?
Well, I think different views. Voltas, of course, I think they had to write off in that particular project overseas, and that was the reason for which the loss that they have incurred, apart from some amount of loss in the market share, which I believe they have the potential to bounce back. Look at the Blue Star's result. I think they are basically more convincing. So if you look at the domestic players and within that some of the larger ones, I think likes of Blue Star could possibly be suggesting that the business is intact and could possibly grow faster in the second half. Of course, I think in this particular line of activity too, on a quarter-over-quarter basis, I think the business could be disappointing also at the same time, because I think if the June-ended quarter had the influence of summers, definitely in the September-ended quarter, I think that influence is not seen. But going forward, once again, January to March quarter and March to April to June quarter, once again, I think you should be seeing higher amount of growth coming in. So from my way of looking at this particular business, yes, the business remains absolutely on a stronger wicket, given the kind of a growth that we are seeing in our economy. Also being endorsed by most of the retail lenders who are basically systematically lending higher to this particular segment of white goods and consumer electronics. So from that point of view too, I believe that I think these companies would probably directly show better performance. One of could be, I think, the situation in some of the cases in the last quarterly result I would like to do.
Today you have big numbers coming out. There's TVS Motor, which has been by far been the best auto stock, this year. There's Titan from the heavyweights. Anything that you still like?
Yeah, I think both the names probably are likely to show much better performance. And I think going by the numbers that we have seen in case of autos, particularly in two-wheelers, I think the numbers are likely to remain stronger for TVS. And going forward in this quarter too, I think the numbers should remain very robust. So the direction also, I think, should be very, very strong coming out from TVS. So definitely, I think it's a positive one. Including for Titan, I think with the festive season sales and also I think now the marriage season sales, probably I think this should be one of the best quarters that the company would be reporting numbers. And also I think continuing in October, December quarter. So overall, I think the numbers are not doubted, but the fact is that the valuations have already scaled up. I'm not too sure how much further upside that one can argue for at current valuation. Those who are invested, definitely I think they will stay invested, but I think for buying afresh, certainly, I think my preference would be to look at the market when the opportunity is around at lower levels. So, from that point of view, I think one will have to wait for fresh buying, but otherwise, stay invested as far as the long-term investors are concerned.
Okay, all right, Deven. Well, thanks so much for joining in, discussing all those stocks. Wishing you a good Friday ahead.